Hello everyone, welcome to our animated philosophy series, where we explore timeless concepts in a modern context. Today we're going to dive deep into one of the most intriguing aspects of Ludwig Wittgenstein's philosophy, specifically his distinction between saying and showing as discussed in his work, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. This idea has had a profound impact on modern philosophy, especially when it comes to understanding the limits of language. Now, Wittgenstein's distinction may seem abstract at first, but it's all about how we use language to convey meaning, and more importantly, what language cannot convey directly. To begin with, Wittgenstein believed that language is a powerful tool, but it has boundaries. We can use it to describe the world in precise terms, things like facts, physical objects, and logical propositions. These things can be clearly said with language, but when it comes to certain deeper concepts, such as ethics, metaphysics, or even the very limits of language itself, Wittgenstein claimed that these cannot be fully captured by words. Instead, they can only be shown. So, what does Wittgenstein mean by this difference between saying and showing? Let's break it down with a simple example. Take a mathematical axiom like 2, 2, 4. This is something we can say, we can express it in words or symbols, and it can be understood universally. However, the underlying logical structure of why this is true, the very nature of mathematics itself, isn't something that can be fully captured just by writing 2, 2, 4. The truth of that axiom shows itself in how mathematics operates, in the logical consistency and structure of the entire system. You see it when you work through the problems, but explaining why math works this way reaches a point where language starts to fall short. Wittgenstein argued that language is limited to representing facts about the world. We can make statements about physical objects, like the book is on the table, and these statements have truth value because they either accurately reflect a fact or they don't. However, when we try to talk about things that aren't factual, such as ethical values or metaphysical ideas, language begins to fail us. For example, what does it really mean to say something is good or bad? These are judgments, not facts, and Wittgenstein believed that ethics isn't something that can be logically expressed in words. Instead, it's something that shows itself in how we live, how we make decisions, and how we engage with the world. This brings us to one of Wittgenstein's most famous and enigmatic propositions, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Here, he's telling us that when we reach the limits of what can be said, when we hit concepts that language cannot fully express, like ethics, metaphysics, or even certain forms of personal experience, then we must acknowledge this boundary and remain silent. Not silent in a literal sense, but silent in the sense that we stop trying to force language to do what it simply cannot do. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine trying to describe the experience of listening to your favorite piece of music. You can use words to describe the technical details, the tempo, the instruments, the rhythm, but the emotional impact, the beauty, the way it moves you. These are things that you can't fully describe with language. They show themselves in the experience of listening, but they can't be fully said. Words, at this point, become inadequate. Wittgenstein's distinction has fascinating implications, especially when we consider fields like ethics and aesthetics. In ethics, for example, we often try to explain why something is right or wrong, but Wittgenstein would argue that ethical values are not matters of fact, they can't be said. Instead, they are demonstrated through action, through the ways we live and treat others. Similarly, with art, it's difficult to say why a particular painting or piece of music is meaningful. Its meaning shows itself in how it affects us, how it communicates beyond the limits of language. Let's also think about social norms. There are certain unspoken rules we follow in everyday interactions. For example, if someone reaches out for a handshake, you don't need words to understand what's happening. The gesture shows you what to do. This is another example of meaning that is not explicitly stated but is clearly understood through action. Now, this idea of showing versus saying also connects to how Wittgenstein saw logic. He believed that logic is the structure of language and reality itself. The very form of logical propositions shows the structure of reality, but the logic behind it cannot always be said. Logic is something we use to construct meaningful sentences, but the rules of logic are like the frame of a building. They give shape and structure, but they remain unseen or unstated when we talk about the objects within that building. As we wrap up, it's worth reflecting on how Wittgenstein's ideas challenge us to think differently about language. His view is a humbling one. He's reminding us that language, for all its power, has limits. And when we reach those limits, we need to be comfortable with silence. This doesn't mean we stop thinking or reflecting, it means we recognize that some truths, some meanings, cannot be captured by words. They must be shown in other ways, through actions, through logical structures, through art, and through the very experiences of life. So next time you find yourself struggling to put something profound into words, remember Wittgenstein, there are some things that language cannot express, and that's okay. Sometimes, what's most meaningful is what cannot be said but only shown. Thank you for learning with us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into similar echoes.